Welcome back to For the Mamas Collective Podcast, a space where we believe in the power of connection and shared experiences.
Hi, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Jaleesa. We're so thrilled to have you back for our 12th episode.
Yes, this podcast has been a dream for both of us because as moms, we know just how much connection, community, and a space to feel seen and heard really matter.
For the Mamas Collective is all about creating that space, a warm, welcoming environment where mothers from all walks of life can come together to share stories, explore the highs and lows, and celebrate the journey of motherhood.
And today's episode is one that's close to the heart. We're diving into the mother wound, how our relationship with our own mothers impacts the way we parent, and what healing looks like when we're trying to raise our kids differently.
Yes. So this one is, hopefully not going to be too emotional, but maybe, and that's okay. But it's important, right? So let's start with our weekly check in before we unpack all of that. If you're new here, our rose is something that brought us joy this week, and our thorn is something that felt challenging. Danielle, you want to go first?
Sure. So, this week, my rose was two things. Again, always,
Mhm.
I'm so greedy. But I was planning for MJ's 20th birthday. And so that was just like
Wow.
so exciting to me because I just can't believe he won't be a teenager anymore.
Right.
And it was nothing big, but he's going to be out of town on his birthday. So we decided
Mhm.
to celebrate yesterday with him, and it was special. And then my other rose is that it's been so nice. It's like in the 70s here, which is amazing.
Mm.
And so just getting out the house, and Chase met a little boy at the park yesterday named Chase, and they played basketball together. And Miss Independent, little Ari,
Mhm.
I witnessed her like climb up the stairs. She was
Mm.
using the railings, and she
Mhm.
was just taking like alternating steps. And I was like, wow, like this is big girl activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just going up and down the slides. She loves slides so much. So that was nice. We must have been at the park for like 2 or 3 hours. It was a lot.
Mm.
But we bought snacks and chalk and bubbles, and we just had a good time. Yeah,
Nice.
so
That's
good
fun.
stuff.
Getting out the house makes
You
life
have
better.
to, because what I'll tell you is this thorn. So it's work related, right? Like it's not the house, it's
Mm.
not the kids this week,
Mhm.
but on Friday, I just got this message from like my boss's boss,
Mm.
and she never reaches out. And it was like
Mhm.
7:30 in the morning when she did. So I was like, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
we've known like some things are stirring, but I just thought the conversation might go differently. Like me and everyone on my team actually have was just mentioned in like a weekly newsletter with the company.
Mm.
So I was like, oh, maybe she's just congratulating us on that. Yeah, no. So they dissolved our team.
Whoa.
I know, I know.
Wow.
And she's like, "Hey, got a couple minutes to connect. It only take a second." I'm like, "Sure." And then she dropped like a bomb.
Wow.
So yeah, basically just dissolving our team. We don't know really all that it entails, but they aligned us with different managers for now.
Mm.
So I still have a job. I'm
Yeah.
led with that, but I think it's just a little scary because one, we all know what change looks like. Two, she
Mhm.
first step in a long process. So there's going to be more change, and likely my duties will change, my region will change, and I just don't really know what to expect.
Mm.
Um
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a thorn because it was like she dropped it on me on a Friday, and I just didn't know how to feel about it.
Wow.
Like, you're breaking up the only team I know, and yeah, I'm just not entirely thrilled. So,
Mhm. I
yeah.
mean, that's huge change. That's very disruptive. Like, okay, you and intentional. Like, let me jump this on you on Friday. So, you get some time so you can come back next week and do some
Right.
work. She wasn't gonna give it to you Wednesday.
No, and in like the sweetest tone in her email, like, "Hey, do you have a couple minutes to connect? It'll only take a sec." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And she was like, "Ugh," just
Mm,
blew up
mm,
my
mm.
Friday. I was like, "Oh, it's 8:15. Okay, let me
Wow.
figure out how to get through this day." And then people kept calling me, and they were like, "How are you?" Mind you,
Mm,
it hasn't even been announced to the company yet, but everybody knew, and everybody's checking on us. And I'm like,
mm.
we'll be okay, but like that's a lot. And it seemed like
Yeah.
everybody already knew except for us, which was weird. Yeah, because
Wow.
we've been asking if something was gonna change. And so it's like, how did everybody else know? Um,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
yeah, thorns.
Yeah.
So, but I'm getting over it.
Wow.
Put my big girl
Yeah.
pants on and go to work tomorrow like nothing
Yeah.
happened.
Right.
But
They gonna
I was
get
about
ready to
give me
work.
some roses.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I don't know if I'm gonna uh, brighten your garden anymore. I don't know what roles I might have to pull from this week. Okay. It was light at 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. That's a rose.
That's
That
a
is a
rose.
rose. That's a rose. That is at least, it's getting there. We're getting there. Spring to me, it's a great time other than the allergies. Just time to, like I said, y'all been getting outside and stuff. So change is on the horizon in a good way. So that's a rose. Outside start to get a little better. Then you feel a little motivated. Thorns. I am a thorny bush right now. So everybody in the house is sick. So there's that. And I mean, life is good. Other than that, it's just exhausting for every single person in the house, other than me. To be sick
Mm.
is a lot, and yeah, that's where I'm at. It's a whole lot of, and so yeah, that's it. I'm looking forward to everyone getting better. Robert is getting there. That's a rose. Yeah, Robert's getting better. He going to school next week. That's just, if I can have a week with some time to myself without being overstimulated by all the coughing, next recording, y'all might get something different out of me. But today, I'm cool. My brain is fried. I'll leave with that.
That's a lot though. So make sure you
Yeah.
take a few minutes to recharge yourself because boy, the whole house it's bad enough when there's one, but when it's the whole house and then it's like you have to work around it to where like, how do I not get sick? Because what we don't
Right.
need is for all of them to be better and then next week you go down.
Well, luckily, I was sick the week before that with Robert, so it's been about
Hmm.
3, 4 weeks of everybody being sick. So I'm like, as soon as I get better, here y'all come. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, okay, God looking out. All right, because I'd much rather be feeling better and dealing with it all than to, like you said,
Mm,
get sick on the back end.
yeah.
So, there is a role somewhere in that. Y'all pick it out. Put it in the comments. Let me know because I still don't hear it, but maybe somebody heard it. uh, all right. So what are we doing?
Well, we're gonna find a rose in Jaleesa's garden, and
Yeah.
y'all leave it in the comments.
Yeah.
But I think that that might be a nice segue into the topic today.
Yeah.
So let's start with this. When we say the mother wound, what are we talking about?
Okay. So to me, it's the emotional pain or patterns we carry from our relationship with our mothers. Um, and I would even say it's intergenerational, but we'll stick to it, it being the relationship with our moms, especially if we felt unseen, criticized, or like love was conditional growing up.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And I don't think it's about blaming our moms. That's not what
Right.
we're here to do today. Okay.
Right. Right.
They were doing the best they could with what they had, but it's
Hmm.
about recognizing the ways those dynamics shaped us.
Right. Which is why this is a good topic to come behind the rethinking supermom, because I think supermom expectations and ideologies come from the root of a wound. Either you're trying really hard to give your kids something you didn't have. You're trying to
Mhm,
break quote unquote intergenerational patterns of trauma, or you're trying to stand in some big shoes, right? Maybe you have a wonderful mother and you're trying to be just as wonderful and it's hard for you.
mhm.
So either way, I think it comes from that piece. That this piece is now revealing to us potentially what the roots of the super mom attitude might come from. So, and I think a lot of us carry this idea, even if it's unconsciously, that we have to live up to some version of motherhood, which is just what I spoke to. But it's tied to how we were raised. Whether we're again trying to repeat it or rebel against it, it's absolutely tied to what we experienced, and that can be challenging when you're trying to, like I said, break generational curses or do things right, do things differently. I don't know. I think it's a challenge. And then, like I said, I think this is a good point to interject that sometimes it's intergenerational. So we're trying to
Mhm.
show up, we're trying to break something or fulfill something that it was our mother's wound from her mother and her mother behind her. Like there's so much. And being a mother right now, I can recognize that, like, oh, there are so many versions of this wound
Mhm.
that live inside of me, and then the next generation and the whether it's healed or not, it's coming along with you.
Mhm.
So this is going to be an interesting topic to dive into.
Yeah, and that's so true. So I have a question for you, but before
Uh-huh.
I get there, I just want to add, because we've all seen that, right? We've experienced it. And
Mhm.
I think when you said repeat it or rebel against it,
Mhm.
what we also have to take into account is the fact that every child has their own personality. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you think you're going to do. If you didn't see that personality being raised by your
Right.
mother while you were growing up,
Right.
it's there's going to be a challenge there, right? Or vice versa. If you I know I used to always say, because I've said this before, I love her, that's my first baby, but my little sister, she
Mhm.
was probably the most challenging as a little one out of all of us. And I used to look at my mom and be like, couldn't be my child. Like, nope,
Yeah.
not my child. My child would never. I wish my child would, and like I
Yeah.
could say
Uh-huh.
those kind of things. Um, but now I have a child like that.
Mm.
So, it's, you know,
Yeah.
we'll let it all unfold. But just to say that. So, you
Yeah.
know, I guess my question to you is, do you feel like you catch yourself repeating patterns from your childhood? Whether they be
Yes.
good, bad, ugly, indifferent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think the hardest part for me, again, as a therapist, I think it hits every mother, but it really hits me hard because I'm literally supposed to know
Mm,
better. And that version of me is not present when I'm parenting. I am not a therapist when I'm parenting. So having all these parts present, it feels like I have a lot of witnesses to what I should be doing in my mind, and I just don't. And then you throw in like, oh, I know I need to show up differently, and I just can't. Will catch myself repeating patterns, and we talked about that in last episode too, right? Like I really
mhm,
have to not say wild stuff. Like I really it's a struggle. Like you can't be unfiltered. You do have to be filtered. What you're saying to your children matters. And
mhm,
it what you are not considering criticism, that child might then hold it on to. Like you said, depending on the child's personality, they might receive that as criticism. And now um you've stifled their voice unintentionally because you are not regulated. So I 100% um I catch myself, especially when I'm overwhelmed, and it's
yeah,
just oh my gosh. I mean, even the typical stuff, even if I'm not overwhelmed, and Rob and I try to change this language of like, well, I think I more try to I can put my therapist hat on when I'm watching him. That's probably so terrible. But when he's like, boys don't cry, stop crying. Why? And I'm like, boys do cry. Yes, they do actually. But then also for me, I'm like, what are you crying? Why are you crying? And the response feels like, but it's more of like, I'm more flustered. I'm not mad, but I think it's received as I'm mad. I've received that before. So I very much understand that I am repeating that that at least in that language, right? Like, wait, why are you crying? What's happening? What's going on? I don't really have a very soft tone. Um, because it feels like a fire to me when the kids are like all disheveled and I'm trying not to match energy, but that wasn't necessarily learned. I'm learning that now, how to regulate myself as the adult in the room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel that, and I think you really resonated with me when you said when you're overwhelmed, because
Yeah.
that's when I see it.
Yeah.
My mother always compliments my patience, and to me, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Patience when you look at me? And
Yeah.
I'm surprised because it feels like the only things I don't save the good moments, or not to say I don't save them, but like I do, but it's I really remember the moments that I'm not the most proud of, right? Like it's like, oh,
Mhm.
I shouldn't have said that like that, or I should have, used a lower tone.
Yeah.
And but I get it. I get it because
Mhm.
after working a whole day, and coming home to do
Yes.
this homework, or like you went to after school and you didn't do what you were supposed to do there, like, yeah, I get it. I'm frustrated. Now you're not in the tub on time and you got to get to
Yeah.
bed. And like, and I see that. And I remember witnessing that, as a child.
Yeah.
And so to
Yeah.
now be, on the outside looking in, um, I thought I would do better. And
Yeah.
always. No.
Yeah.
So,
That's a key I think that's a key factor that in my healing journey, thinking about that, like, wow, I can really let go of some things now because at this stage in parenthood, I'm really understanding my mother for the first time
mhm.
as an equal, as an adult, not in my childhood wounded self, but in my like, girl, I understand. I
Yeah.
think I understand now why. Me as a kid received it all the way wrong because obviously I don't have the capacity to understand. Oh, she had a rough day, or my parents had a rough day. Now it's like, okay, I get it. I get it. And I think it's like, oh, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Because when we have these types of conversations, I'm recognizing like, oh, we all kind of have this thing in us that's at the end of the day, it's tough. It's really tough to be the best parent. And that kind of sucks because you have to show up like you have a full tank at the end of the day for your kids. And I
Yeah.
just think their generation, they did not have that. Not the majority. It was like I didn't worked all day or I'm going to work or the
Mhm.
importance of you having to know how to do this because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. That kind of freedom of like just be a kid. We had a little less of that. And I think I'm understanding, my mother's position in adulthood a lot better now while I'm trying to figure out life. And I'm like, I'm not getting it. What's happening? It's like, well, I just don't have the capacity, and that would make a lot of sense. Where we talk about supermom again, it's like, well, okay, maybe what I remember the most are the moments where my mother couldn't be supermom in some form or fashion. And that's
Mhm.
really, that's unfortunate that that is what stuck because now I'm doing a lot of, I'm over 10 years into healing things that, my little child self wouldn't have known not to take. But now you're just trying to dismantle some old narratives while trying to make it better for your kids. And I don't know. That's why we millennials are tired and it's hard to find our roses. So, with all that being said, how do you think that's probably a good segue to this question that I've been holding on to is, how do we even start to unlearn this stuff? How do we dismantle? I know my 10 years of dismantling, but like, how do we even start that?
Yeah, so I think the first step is recognizing our patterns. And
Mhm.
I say this all the time. I said it to Trey yesterday, but like acceptance is the first step in everything. Like the minute we
Yeah.
just accept, like, this is who I am, and we say it
Mhm.
out loud, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's true. But just noticing when we're parenting from a place of reaction
Mm.
rather than intention.
Mhm. Yes. Yes, I think that's huge. Acceptance, awareness of and awareness of our reactions. The
Mhm.
emotion regulation piece. Accepting and having awareness that okay, I don't know if I'm in my best self right now. I don't know if I can regulate in the best way. So being able to identify those things. And I think giving ourselves some grace in all of that is key,
Mm.
right? Like I said, maybe my childhood self is holding on to the negative, but also my adults. So now my adult self holds on to the negatives that I perceive in myself as a parent, which is where mom guilt and all this other stuff comes from. So reminding myself that I'm going to be doing this work and it's not going to happen overnight. These
Yeah.
moments I can have grace for, like, okay, so why didn't I? Getting curious about it, like, why didn't I handle this differently? This is an exact scenario that I know my little 8-year-old self would have loved a hug, and I didn't do that. Why didn't I do
Mhm.
that? Well, the curiosity is more like, because it's manual labor for me. So I'm gonna have to go back and give the hug on the back end. I can do that. And let that go. So then not holding on to, oh man, I wish I would have handled it different. Being stuck in that to where you don't then handle it differently. Have
Right.
some corrective action behind it. If you are going to react, okay, have some corrective feedback for yourself and for your child. Give them something a little bit different cuz again, breaking generational curses and trying to dismantle these things, it's not overnight. Like I said, I'm 10 years in. I would have thought I was better by now. Granted, I mean my relationship with my mother is vastly different because of the healing I've done. But then stuff still comes up because my kids are growing. And they
Mhm.
each stage they enter, I'm like, oh, okay. It is time to learn some lessons in a new way. Thank you, God. All right. Here I
Yeah.
am. I'm gonna do it.
You know what? And I think all of that is so important. And I have a quick story,
Yeah.
but as we all know, my between my oldest and my middle, there's a 12-year age gap.
Yeah.
And their dad called me the other day. Not the other day, it might have been like a month ago, who knows.
Mhm.
But we were talking about Chase.
Mm.
And he was like, Danielle, you have to understand he is not Marquise. Like he is
Yeah.
not. The way you were able to talk to and rear and guide Marquise, like he was different.
Yeah.
He was more like you. And of course I know that. I can see that. But to
Mhm.
hear him say that, I was like,
Mm.
got it. And that was the first time
Yeah.
it really clicked because for me, like, I'm fair. Trey always tells me like
Yeah.
the world isn't fair. And I'm like, but I'm fair. I'm gonna treat
Yeah.
everybody fairly. So if I did it for MJ, I'm gonna do it this way for you. And that's not the case.
Mm.
And so, he was just kind of going into like how he's more sensitive and how he's this and how he has to be handled
Yeah.
with care and that you might have to repeat yourselves, things like that. And
Yeah.
so, to your point of like going and doing the manual labor on the back end, like
Mhm.
I feel that because
Mhm.
I do that a lot, especially with Chase. And,
Mhm.
the self-compassion part where it's like
Mm.
I can forgive myself for not getting it right the first time.
Yeah.
Because we have to. Like it's impossible to be perfect.
Right.
Especially at the end of a long day or a
Yeah.
long week or when you're overwhelmed, overstimulated, like when the dogs are barking and the doorbell's ringing and the dinner's burning, like it's
Yeah.
hard, okay? But like we just have to
Yeah.
let go of that impossible standard that
Yeah.
we're going to get it right all the time. We're not. And
Right.
so when we stop trying,
Mhm.
um, to always get it right and we accept and realize that like there's going to be work required if we want to parent
Yes.
differently. Um,
Yes.
and work isn't easy. It never
Yeah.
has been, right?
Right.
Nobody's ever said that. So
Right. Right. No version of work is easy, right? Yeah. And I think that speaks to that emotion regulation piece, right? Number 1 is letting go of whomever reared you, letting go of some things in the way of maybe they didn't know how to regulate themselves. And so
mhm,
that is why they showed up the way they did. It doesn't mean they loved you any less. It's just that that might have been harder to access without the awareness of how to regulate, even if it's a corrective action, right? It's a, oops, I was dysregulated. Now let me come
Mhm.
back and inform you of that and make it as right as I can, right? It doesn't have to be right. It just has to feel better. And I think that's a piece for us to move forward too. The more self-compassion you have, the
Mhm.
the likelier you are to be able to self-regulate and emotionally regulate to the point where all that hard work you have to do, it isn't necessarily compounding. Like you're not just getting worse, even though you know this thing you have to do consciously, but more so like, okay, we back at this. Last time I didn't handle this so well, but I'm gonna come at this a little different. And I know I can do that because, we had a conversation after that last time. So I'll have to sit with you and talk to you about this again. And
Mhm.
this time I can be a little more regulated because I have a little bit more compassion for myself. And I think having compassion for self starts with letting go of anything that's holding us and then not allowing us to have the access to it. So I think that I'm speaking to the part of healing that's about realizing that different doesn't mean perfect, right? You don't have to be a supermom because that's not what you had. Um, or, whatever. You just show up differently, show up in your awareness and in your acceptance, and show up different every day. Like, be okay with, I'm going to show up different every day. I'm
Mhm.
try to be better different, but it might not. It might just have to be different.
Yeah, and I think if we just pause right there, like if you're taking notes, jot that down, highlight it,
Yeah.
double underline it, make it
Yeah.
bold, write it all caps. Different doesn't mean perfect.
Yes.
Period. Like
Yep.
that, it doesn't. And
Yep.
we have to accept that. You know,
Mhm. For
that
sure.
was good. I needed that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, me too. Especially after that thorny bramble week I've had. Realizing that. Man, that's so funny because my mom is so gentle when people are sick, when we've been sick. So I don't know why I just can't. That's not a mother wound. My mama showed up for me when I was sick. So I don't know why. I'm just like, I can't. Everybody get better now. I'm tired of being nursemaid. But I'll figure it out. That's jumping back in. That's a part of doing the inner work though. But that is something that's on my heart right now, is figuring out like, man, I wish I could have shown up differently this past week. And all I can do is know that there's not much more different I could have been. I made sure everyone had medicine. I made sure they ate. I made sure I thought about everything. And so, because it didn't come in a gentle tone doesn't mean it didn't get the job done. So, it's all about doing that inner work. And we talked about this before we started. I was like, I'm gonna have to journal before this. I'm gonna have to get some things off my chest because of how tough of a week I've had. But I think journaling is really important.
Mhm.
Therapy is really important. Just having our honest conversations like this one is really important. And just going back to the therapy piece, sometimes talk therapy isn't enough when you have wounds and traumas that are really deep and deeply ingrained. If anyone's looking for something like, ooh, therapy's not my thing, I encourage you to invite your body into the conversation. Do some somatic therapy, do some mind body stuff, do some yoga, do something that helps you center yourself, and release some of the tension in your body, because a lot of times we're storing trauma, we're storing wounds in the body. We think it's our mind because our mind is always racing and running. It's not. Actually, I think our bodies store. Imagine all that we know our mind is doing,
Mhm.
but the body is doing, in my opinion, twice as much, and it's holding twice as much. We just don't know it because we're up in our heads with the thoughts, but the body is receiving the data, the input from all that thinking and all that receiving of the world around you. So I really strongly encourage people to consider something like somatic therapy, something like a mind body type therapy that's going to reconnect you with releasing the wounds and energy and trauma out of your body, so that you can get to that self compassion and acceptance and awareness and all that beautiful stuff.
Yeah. You know, yes. Yes. And like you said, sometimes you said having honest conversations,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
not with just anybody, but with people who get it. So,
Mm.
I think I mean, you and I talk, right?
Yeah.
Um, to be honest, like I talked to Trey about it. And
Yeah.
it just goes back to like both of our childhoods.
Yeah.
He can kind of see into like, maybe not, like I saw
Mhm.
that growing up, or we both saw that. Maybe we shouldn't, we know we should,
Yeah.
and that helps. Um, but sometimes that means having hard conversations with our moms too.
Yeah.
And, before I give you a question here, I just want to say,
Yeah.
like, I've been there.
Mm.
I've done that, and they haven't always been easy, but necessary. And I think a large part because, like, we know what it was growing up
Mhm.
with them. And so
Mhm.
when we're on FaceTime or, when we're visiting or my mom's visiting us, and I see her with my children,
Yeah.
right. It, that one eyebrow goes up, and I'm like, no, wait a minute. Hold on.
Harpo, who this woman?
Right. Because what is happening, And and it
Yeah.
makes me feel two ways. One,
Mhm.
I'm grateful.
Yeah.
But two, it's when you really take a step back and when there's less pressure, it's almost like a second chance for them
Mhm.
to be the mothers they always wanted to be. They
Yep.
just didn't have the bandwidth
Yeah.
or maybe the opportunity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, have you ever talked to your mom about any of this stuff?
You know, funny enough, I preach a lot to people and about talking and getting your feelings on that. My mom is the one person that is very hard for me to have these kind of conversations with.
Hmm.
It's very hard for me. Um, and as much healing as I've had, it's still very hard. But you know what? What I have done with my mom, which I really love, is I ask her questions about her. I
Mhm.
think that's what it is. What I learned in the first time I went to therapy in college behind mother wounding was, and my therapist said something that never left me, which is maybe why I don't dive into these conversations. She's like, "Well, what if this is the only way she knows how to show you that she loves you?" And I was like, okay, how do I hold on to that? I'm like, I want a mom that's this, and that. I want a mom that's showing up this way. And he's like, but what if this is the way that she knows how to love you and to show it? And that forever changed me. And so I think I try to be a little more curious about like, why? What's
Yeah.
going on here? Why are we doing this here? And I think too, I we more recently have harder conversations, but it's more of her like, I want to show up differently. I don't want to be this for y'all. I don't want to be that. So we just don't have a direct conversation. I'll say that. We have
Mm.
conversations that are indirect. We haven't had direct, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I experienced. We can They're more anecdotal, like, girl, why how you telling me to be nice, and where you think I learned that from? Where you think I learned how to be this way from? It's it's more like that, like, ma'am. But in our conversations, when she talks about her childhood, and that's what I really want to know, I think I get more information. So also know how to talk to your mother, know how to
Mhm.
have a hard conversation with your mom. Your mom isn't there yet. If you can look at your mom and say, wow, I see a hurting little girl, that's not, then you can't have that conversation with her. She's not going to be able to give you whatever it is you think you need.
Yeah.
Sometimes people can, and they can just receive it, but if you too sensitive to not get the reception you're looking for, I don't know about the conversation. But not saying to not have it. I'm saying it can be done in indirect ways. And you can do it with an intent of learning and trying to understand. And I think that's where I'm coming from. I only
Mhm.
want to have conversations that I know I'll gain something from in regards to understanding. And so the conversations kind of come out in different ways, but I have understood a lot more now because I'm in a place to receive whatever it is that she may or may not say. And I think the harder conversations have been when she's talking about her childhood and different things, and I feel a deep sadness for the little girl that she didn't get to be.
Yeah.
And I understand that, oh, that's the person that mothered me. Okay. But the person that is a nana, I've told my grandmother this. I said, she's like, "Isn't it so great to have kids?" I'm like, but you know what's really great is to witness my mom be a grandmother. I said, this is the most healing experience. I don't If I never had another conversation with her, I would know, wow, look at the capacity this person has to love deeply, unconditionally. Like, it irritates me when she's like, "Oh, leave him alone. Don't say that." And but then I'm like, "Man, I love that for them. I love that so much. So much of me is healed witnessing her show up in a way." And I'm like, "Right, cuz she don't have all of this on her, all of the day to
Mhm.
day." And my parents got divorced pretty early, so she's doing it on her own. I got two separate households. Both of my parents are doing it on their own, which I think is why I don't try to have hard conversations, because I'm just like, I mean, y'all, okay. I'ma just keep doing me, but that's another story. But I think it's one of those things where I think a lot of us can have our mothers be our villain in their story. And for a long time, that's where I was. I think that is a through line in my maternal line, is for the mother to be the villain. And it just feels good to know that at this stage, at this big age, I can recast her. That's
Yeah.
not who she is. And I have to recast her because I don't want to be Sydney's villain. And I know there are some moments that get real villainous. Okay, I can be Ursula, okay? Uh but because of what I've witnessed in her, in her relationship with my children, I recognize that that's not actually who she ever was, and it's certainly not who she is now. So, you know, it's just kind of stuff like that. That was deep, but that's what y'all getting when I ain't got too many roses.
No, I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just listening to you and just realizing so many things that I don't think I ever really pieced together, you know?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I love it, and I'll save y'all the story. But yes,
Yeah.
it makes sense to now know, like, now I get why she raised us the way she did. I get why
Yeah.
she's the grandma she was. My grandparents were phenomenal. Um,
Mm.
I won't say they weren't, but they came with their flaws, you know?
Right.
And so
Right.
they were phenomenal when they weren't drunk, but they were
Yeah.
alcoholics. And, you know, that was hit or miss, you
Yeah.
know, and when you grow up in that kind of inconsistency, I think
Mm.
the need to protect or to, you know, she was very self-sufficient as a little girl.
Mhm.
And so she made us very self-sufficient
Yeah.
as little children. And, you know, I try to do it with my kids, and well, it worked with MJ. That's all I got going for me right now. Okay. That's it.
I hear you.
That's all. um, but but you know, like, I get it. I get it. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I say all that to say is, you know, like, it's
Mhm.
a puzzle,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we have to kind of piece it together, but just understanding that healing doesn't mean, you know, we have to cut our moms off. The
Right.
relationship doesn't have to end. It's
Right.
more of like an opportunity, I would say,
Mhm.
to let go of some anger, set
Yeah.
some boundaries,
Yeah.
you know, and find compassion for their story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, right. Like you said, this episode isn't about blaming. This episode
Mm-mm.
is actually about acknowledging and letting some things go. And that the possibility to hold both empathy for them and healing for ourselves. This is the conversation to have, to get there. So, before we jump into the takeaways, I think we want to maybe let's do a special shout out. So, Karen, I love you, girl. I see you. I see all your parts, and I appreciate you. And this is about love. This is a love letter to Karen and Kim. So you got something for Karen?
Yeah. No, I mean, to Kim, she knows that's my girl.
Yeah.
That's my best friend.
Yeah.
We talk
Yeah.
every chance we get. So she knows how much I love her. And it's
Yeah.
not, I think in having this conversation, a lot can kind of come up. Like I'm having some big feelings that I'll probably
Yeah.
go talk to her about after this episode.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have so many positives. Like there's
Mm.
so many pieces of me as a mother
Mm.
that grew from, the wonderful mother she was. Just the
Yeah.
way I make things special for my children and the way I show
Yeah.
up for them. There's so many positives.
Yeah.
And, we could talk about that all day, but these
Mhm.
are the hard conversations that people want to gloss over, and we have to
Mhm.
have them. We do. So, again,
Yes.
there's no blame here. That my mother did a phenomenal job. If y'all
Right.
knew half her story, if y'all knew a quarter of her story, you'd be
Right.
like, you did what with who, when,
Yeah.
how? And it's just like
Right.
that is what a superwoman is, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So, to
For
Kim,
sure.
you did it.
You did it. You did it. Shout out. Shout out to the
Yeah.
boomers. Y'all did it. Now come get these
Right?
kids. Please do it again. Come get the
She'll
kids.
she'll be here in
Please.
a month to celebrate her
Ooh.
60th birthday. Girl, take these kids.
Take these
Okay? Y'all go
kids.
do something for
Yeah.
60
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
enjoy
Go.
yourselves.
Go. Let them pour into you.
Yeah.
Let them pour in.
Let them keep you young. I
Yeah.
got you.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Well, if you've made it this far with us,
Yeah.
we just want to give you a little something to take with you this week.
Yeah, so for sure. So here we go, mamas. Here's your challenge. Number 1, reflect on your own childhood experiences. Ask yourself this: what patterns am I repeating? And what do I want to do differently? Number 2, notice your triggers.
Mm.
When you react in a way that feels like it's coming from your past, pause and ask, is this how I want to respond? 3, give yourself grace. You're breaking cycles. It's hard work. It's beautiful, but it's hard. And you won't get it perfect every time. And that's okay.
And if you're ready, maybe start a conversation with your mom or
Mm.
write her a letter, even if you don't
Mhm.
send it. You don't
Mhm.
have to send it, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes just getting those feelings out helps us process.
Absolutely. Just get them out your body. That's the big thing. When they come up, get it out. All right. So, we'd love to hear how this resonates with you. So DM, hey, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. Let me set us up right. Ha! Do all the social media things. DM us on Instagram at For the Mamas Collective. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all the good stuff. Let us know. What's one thing you're working on doing differently for your kids?
Yep. Come share with us. And we'll see y'all next week. Thanks for spending this time with us today.
Yeah.
This is tough. This is a hard
Yeah.
conversation, but you're not in it alone.
Absolutely. See y'all next time, mamas. Take care of yourselves. You're doing amazing.
Bye.
Bye.